hey guys, we're live and people are starting to come in here. So that makes me super excited. We have so many people signed up for this webinar, and no kidding, because everyone I know is talking about parents being like filling out the forms. We're seeing that on BSD. So we're going to be getting into that as people come in. But Becky, long time no see. I literally
Hey.
saw you this weekend. Becky, tell them where we were.
So this girl right here had a birthday and we got to celebrate in Las Vegas at the NACS conference
Yes, it was
of all the
fun, and it
places.
was like a work trip slash personal trip together. We had a blast together. We had so much fun. And Becky won a little, and I
Oh,
won a little, and it was a lot of fun. It was fun when
it
you're
was
winning.
fun. It was super fun. And we went to this awesome steakhouse called Poppy's. We have to tell them about the $1,000 steak because
Oh
this,
my goodness, y'all. Talk
yeah,
about a marketing ploy, right? Like the best
right,
marketing I've ever seen.
hands down.
Oh my gosh. So we go to Poppy's Steakhouse, and they have the original one. I believe it's in Miami, and they have this one in Vegas at the new Fontainebleau Hotel. And when you go up to it, there's like a bouncer and a red carpet, and the bouncer was very cute. And so like it just made for like a really great first impression. But you walk in and it's like a nightclub, like it's dark, and every time someone orders the $1,000 steak, oh my gosh, the whole place becomes electric, and they like bring out lights and they bring out signs, and they're all like cheering, and they play loud music, and it literally like have us like a disco ball. It's so fun. It was a blast. And
So
nine
fun.
people while we were there ordered the $1,000 steak.
I mean, it was literally every 15 minutes they were doing this huge presentation and it was
Yeah.
insane. Like even the waiter was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like if everyone has to drop what they're doing. Like
Yeah.
they're in the middle of taking your order and they're like, "We'll be right back." Everybody has to stop what they're doing and then they have to go into the kitchen and all come out together and do this huge, like it's almost like you're at a UFC fight, right? Did it remind you of being
Yes,
like
that's
at a
exactly what
UFC
it's.
fight?
And isn't that funny? Because that really is like one of those marketing things. Like you want someone to spend $1,000 on a steak, like make a
Mhm.
huge deal about. And of course, my mind is going straight to schools, and I'm like, this is why we make a big deal out of a lot of things in schools, because
Right.
an enrollment is $18,000. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
We should
Like a
just
yeah.
do like a future webinar on that.
Totally. Yes. And like that's like schools, like you should be videotaping like people's last clock outs and
Yeah.
things like that, like celebrations, like big milestones and making a big deal out of it, having a theme song, like getting the crowd pumped up. I mean, how many people were literally videotaping that every time it happened?
Oh, everyone. And I know we
Yeah,
were. Oh my gosh. It
we
was
were.
so fun. So fun. Okay, so we are gonna, by the way, thank you all for always jumping in to our chat. I love our chat. It's always so fun. We had someone who was in class with you, Becky, who just mentioned that in the chat. And thank you, Megan,
Fun.
for the birthday wishes. Guys, behind me, is a Christmas tree, and I know it's September, but TikTok shop, you got to get this stuff early. So I'm gonna start selling this thing in a couple weeks. So get
Out
ready.
of
Get
control.
ready for the flocked Christmas tree. But I just wanted to mention that because I know I'm gonna be like, I move a lot, and someone's gonna be like, does Jen have her tree up? What is up with that? So we are gonna jump into our topic today of parents with enrollment. As you guys know, I personally think we have the best webinars in higher ed because I don't love a sales pitch. And I love to talk about topics that people are actually freaking talking about. And this is one of them. And so, one of the things I'm hearing at conferences, I'm hearing when we're talking to our beauty schools directory members is parents are filling out the lead form. I can't even get a hold of the actual lead, it's the parent of the lead. And I thought, why not do a webinar on this with an admissions expert? So, Becky, welcome. Becky is the VP of Enrollment for spec schools. And Becky, tell us a little bit about your history, and then, who spec schools is in case, people don't know.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. I was able to be a guest last year and we had a blast, so I'm happy to be on again for this year. And as she mentioned, my name is Becky Blakely, and I am the Vice President of Enrollment Management for the Salon Professional Education Company, which is SPEC. We do have 30 schools across the country, all beauty schools, beauty and wellness. And, it's awesome. We have schools from San Jose, California, all the way to Buffalo, New York. So we legit represent all markets, all sizes of schools, all demographics. And it's just a great, great franchise to be a part of. Each of our schools are individually owned and operated. So that's the beauty of being a part of a franchise is you really can still own your own school, but you have the benefit of having an operations team, people like myself, different VPs of each managing department to help you along the way with trainings, best practices, systems, procedures. So I just happen to do that for our admissions folks. And shout out to all of my spec schools who are watching today. I hope you guys are here and tuning in. And yeah, we can't wait to talk about parents and enrollment. This is something that I am super passionate about. I've been in higher ed for almost 20 years now. I know I don't look it. I did get carded in Vegas at the blackjack table.
That's
I
the
don't know if
best
he was
thing
just
ever.
doing that to make me feel good or if he really thought I wasn't 21, but I'll take it. But anyways, so I've been in higher ed for a long time in different capacities and different roles. And some of my experience has been specific to working just with high school students. So some schools actually have a high school division of admissions.
Yeah.
So I've had the perspective of working strictly with high school students in the past. And let me tell you, like, a lot of parent involvement when you're a high school admissions representative. So when Jen approached me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to come and speak about this?" This was just perfect, like, because I'm very passionate about it. And my opinion is that parents involved in enrollment is an awesome thing because it just helps overall with the whole entire process. Now, it's not perfect because, as we're going to talk about, it brings challenges, it brings different roadblocks, it, makes for a different and a unique experience. But I do want to encourage you guys not to shy away from having parents involved. And we're going to talk more about that because it really is going to help your numbers overall in admissions and even in as far as like retention of keeping those students throughout the entirety of the program.
I
So
love
I'm
that you're coming
excited.
into it already with that positive side because I got to
Yeah.
tell you, it's usually negative from what I hear. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of that is also just sort of like these preconceived ideas in our heads of these
Hmm.
overbearing parents who are doing everything for their kids, literally
Yeah.
everything, including going on a website and filling out a form. And so I love that you're taking that positive side of it. I think that's going to be a really good kickoff for us. Really quick, I'm looking at the attendees who are on here. I got to give a shout out to Judith Brown. Judith, I'm mentioning you because I met you at a conference recently. Where were we? Max or something. And she never ever misses a webinar, and I adore that.
Wow.
And I see her lots of times in the chat. And I know that there's a lot of you guys that never miss webinars. But she specifically came up to me and we just hit it off right away. All right, let's get into the historical context, Becky, because
Yeah.
what's really funny to me is I think the reason why this topic is so prevalent right now is because a lot of our leads are getting younger because back when we went to school, we would have never gone to a vocational school. Like, you know what I mean? Like when we were in school, us millennials, it was like you're going to college or you're dumb. And
Yeah.
you were almost bullied if you didn't. And so what I saw even when I entered this industry 15 years ago, a lot of the student population was older. Like a lot of them were in their 20s and they had already started at a college and then came. And so
Hmm.
for that reason, sure, I'm going to fill out a form if I'm 24 years old. But
Right.
I think we're seeing a shift in our students who are literally graduating high school and then going straight to beauty school or a
Yeah.
trade school, which for
Yeah.
me is really exciting. So can you talk a little bit about the historical context and also what you're seeing and why this is happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we should all know by now that, admissions at the end of the day is sales. And it's really important to know who are your customers, who are your students. Your students are your customers. Now, it's not a traditional sales role, right? It's a consultative sales role. It is educational sales. So it has a lot of differences. But at the end of the day, if you want to be successful, you need to know your market, you need to know your customer, you need to know your student, And you also need to know and understand the buying party, the support party, anybody who's going to be involved in that process. So what we're seeing, I think especially with beauty schools is that trend for younger students, right? Our target demographic is 18 to 24 years old. Many of
Mhm.
them, like you said, Jen, they're coming straight out of high school. A lot of our spec schools, that's why we see such a big boom like in Q3. Like our enrollment explodes in Q3 because it's our traditional time where students are graduating from high school, right, in June or May, and then they're starting college, whether it's in August or September. Those are when we boom and we have the most students, right? And that's when our classes just blow up. So we're seeing that across the board. That is a trend. And I want to just understand, like, who are the parents of our students, right? What
Yeah.
generation are they? Because we're always talking about Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen Z. That's our student, right? Gen Z
So
is our
Gen Z is
student,
the student. So who are their
right?
parents?
So who are their parents? Most of the parents are what we call Gen X. So Jen, you and I are millennials, right?
Mhm.
And some of those parents are going to be millennials if they were younger and had kids younger. But the majority of the parents of Gen Z are Gen X. And these are people who were born between 1965 and 1980. That's Gen
Right.
X.
Isn't that wild?
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
This is just crazy to me that these people are even old enough to have kids graduating high school. But no, you're absolutely right. That's what happens when we get older, right? We're like, wait, that's like just a couple years older than us. But that is the truth.
Exactly.
That's who enrolling. So we have parents who are in their 40s and 50s
Right.
of Gen Z. And
Right.
that is a very different demographic than a boomer parent. Because my
Very.
parents are boomers, yours
Mine
probably
too.
are too. Very
Hmm.
different. So give us some characteristics of these Gen X parents.
Yeah. So I think it's important to know what they're all about. And it's funny because I think why we're seeing this is I don't know if people know this, but Gen X is known, the parents of Gen X are known as being the generation of helicopter parents.
Mm,
Did you know that,
interesting.
Jen?
No, I actually thought that was millennials. I didn't know that was Gen X. That's
It's Gen
interesting.
X. Yep,
Okay.
it's Gen X.
And a
So Gen
helicopter
X,
parent, as you guys know, are the people that want to swoop in and take care of their kids for every little thing that goes wrong.
yeah, yeah. So it now it continues into millennials as well, but Gen
Sure.
X is who started it. So Gen X started the helicopter parent movement. All right. So if you're mad about the helicopter parents, you got to blame Gen X. Okay. So this is my husband's age. Like, and I can see it. Like, even the difference between I'm a millennial and he's a Gen X. And there's only like 7 years in between us, but even in our parenting style, it's completely different, right?
Mm-hmm.
He will want to do everything for my kids, like every little thing. And I'm like, whoa, 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 like, let them do this, let
Yeah,
them do
makes
that.
sense.
So I even see it like in my own world. And my kids are a little bit younger because I waited to have kids till I was older in life. But even that, middle school age where my kids are, or elementary age, I can see the difference between a Gen X and a millennial parent.
But I do
Now, a
want to
little,
point out,
oh,
Becky,
go ahead.
that this just comes from such a place of good intention because,
Yes.
Gen X likely had parents that were so disconnected with them and literally did not give a crap what they were doing every day that they wanted to overcompensate for that and be extra hands-on. And so, as we introduce this topic, and you bring up such a good point, this really comes from a place of them just wanting to help. They're not trying to be these overbearing, terrible people. They're trying
Hmm.
to overcompensate for their childhood.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head per usual, Jen. And it's just, it comes from a good place. And that's why I say having parents involved is not a bad thing. Because when I was doing admissions, 15 years ago, it was hard to get parents involved. It was difficult. They weren't as involved as they are now. And so again, good with the bad, but
Yeah.
it's just very interesting. Gen X is very involved with their children's school and their social development. They encourage their children to make their own choices and try new things, but they are very, very, very involved in their children's lives, and that is really kind of like one of the main characteristics of a Gen X parent and why they were kind of coined the helicopter parent. And I think it's also important to know, it was funny because I was reading an article a while back and it kind of stuck with me about, parents and the different parenting style of the different, generations. Because again, what I love about admissions and what we do is that everything's always changing. So what works now to recruit Gen Z students is not going to work when Gen Alpha comes up, right?
Or
And how we relate to Gen X parents is going to be different for how we relate to millennial parents. So all of this stuff is really important just to, kind of keep researching, keep coming to webinars, keep learning because it's always changing, right? And it's always
yeah,
different.
and even speakers need to be, they need to be changing what they're teaching. I know that's something that you do, Becky, is you
Mhm.
evolve what you teach now is not what you taught 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a program for admissions and marketing and I rewrote it 3 times last year. I
Yeah.
literally kept adding to it and taking away stuff just because I could see so much the lead shifting. And so I think it's great if you have seasoned reps in your school, but how in tune are they to these generations? And are they changing? Are they going with the flow? Or are they just mad that all of a sudden a parent is
Mhm.
filling out a form? So let's talk about, yay, these people care about their kids, but what are the challenges that come with that?
All right. So a couple of things, couple best practices. I would say don't shy away from an initial conversation with the parent.
Okay.
So when we have onboarding of new admissions reps, I have the pleasure of training everybody who comes into spec. And we have kind of common obstacles to overcome that we talk about, objections to setting an appointment. And one of the things we talk about in our training is, how do you deal with someone who calls like, hey, I'm just inquiring for more information for my son or my daughter. And this happens all the time, as we know. But what I want you guys to like wrap your brain around is that this is not an objection. Like, please do not see this as a roadblock, as a problem. When you get a parent that calls or requests information, I want you to jump up and down in your chair and have the best day of your life because this is a parent who is going to, this means your show rate is going to be higher for that appointment. This means that your inquiry to enrollment rate is going to go up and your inquiry to start rate is going to go up because that parent being involved from day one is going to make for a better experience overall. So again, when you see that come in, don't think of it as, an obstacle or an objection. I want you to embrace it. And I want you to really just have a conversation with that parent. It starts with empowering them, but also setting the expectations, right?
So I don't want to
So,
role play with you, but I do want to go, I do kind of want to take you through, maybe we
uh-huh,
should role play, but maybe I just like, let's go through what that scenario looks like. A lead comes in,
yeah,
you get excited, you're like, ooh, this is
yeah,
a fresh lead. And as soon as you get them on the phone, you're like, oh crap, it's the
yeah,
mom.
yeah,
Which instantly, I think a lot of admissions people, like you said, they immediately put up their block and they're like, listen, if your daughter wants to call me, here's my number.
yeah,
And they kind of like shut down. Take me
yeah.
through what you say to that mom.
Sure. All right. So again, our job in admissions is always to encourage people and empower people. So I want you to empower that parent, right? I want you to say like, "Oh my gosh, Jen, so great to meet you. That is so awesome. What is the name of your student?" Right? So we want to make sure that we are getting that student's name. We're making sure our records are correct because here's the thing. Sometimes parents will put their own name and phone number in.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll put the student's information, but their name, it's
Yes,
crazy. Like it's,
yes.
or they'll pretend to be the student. It's all over the place. Like it's really wild. But one thing that you have to do is you just have to make sure you know who is the parent, who is the student, and keep them separated, right? Because your first contact for this lead is the parent, and we're going to deal with that and we're going to talk about that. But the actual student that you need to have contact through the admissions process, right, is someone different. So we're going to have to make sure that we have our files in order, that once that person starts the enrollment process, we're talking directly to them, right? Because we
And
have
I
to
love
meet
that
that
you
kid.
asked the name too, because I feel like if I were a parent, and listen, I'm a parent of 2 pugs. And when I say I have pugs and someone says, "Oh, what's their names?" I'm like, "Oh, they actually care." Like that's pretty cool. I want someone to care about my dogs. I want them to know, where I adopted them from, all that stuff.
Right?
So even I love the idea then of asking, like, shutting down the conversation and being like, tell me about your daughter. What's her name?
Yes.
How old is
Yes.
she? Like, how exciting, how fun, how long has she been thinking about this? Like, you can still
How
have
did
that
she get
conversation.
interested in beauty school? Yes. So we don't need to go in discovery the way we would with a potential student, but you have to build rapport. You have to start off with just a positive experience for that parent to say, "Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. I love that you're being proactive and helping your son or daughter through this process. Kudos
Mhm.
to you. You are a great parent." Tell them they are a great parent
Ooh,
right
I
then and
love
there.
that.
Praise that person and let them know. Now they're going to put their wall down. They're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to give their daughter or son's name, phone number, anything that you need, right? On your side, you
Mhm.
have to first. If I have a roadblock and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to talk to this person, I'm not going to build rapport with them. They're not going to get trust out of me. So I really have to, do my best to build them up, build that relationship, build that rapport, and then lay out the process and, let them know what's going on. And here's the thing. Um, people people who don't have a parent involved in the process of first admissions appointments, if someone comes in without a parent, right? If they come into that first initial appointment with no parent and they are a dependent student, right?
Mhm.
And they need their parent to fill out the FAFSA and they're planning to use FAFSA funds, that person is like 80% more likely to ghost you for the next appointment if the parent is not present in the first appointment. So I'm telling you guys, the key to success in admissions is having the parent present at the first appointment. And I
Mhm.
will die on that hill.
Mm. I
I
like,
will die on
especially
that hill.
now. No, I mean, I would say that's something that's changed. 10 years ago, you didn't want them there because they were crossing their arms saying, no, you should be going to nursing school. You shouldn't be coming
Yeah.
here. This is a hobby. But that's not the parent today.
Nope.
We
Yep.
have a different type of parent, and we have a different rhetoric in society that these are actual careers and they shouldn't be wasting their $100,000 to go to school for 4 years to just party. Like
Yeah.
this is something they actually want for their kid. So, and I think, Becky, that is why so many people shy away from it, because the parents they dealt with in the past are
Hmm.
not the parents that they're dealing with now. Like we really have to remind ourselves of that.
Absolutely. So they're great. They're great. And now they might ask a lot of questions. They might try to control the conversation. We're going to
Yeah.
get to all that. But I think it all comes down to setting expectations, right? Because really, we always say whoever asks the questions has the control.
Mhm.
So if you have set questions that you're going to ask, I know, we can't get too much into this, but like, for my franchise, I have an entire like phone guide to go through if you're having a conversation with a parent.
Mhm.
I would highly encourage you to sit down and have these guides. Like, okay, if I'm talking to a prospective student, what are the questions I want to ask? What are the things I want to say? How do I want to engage them? And how does that look different when I'm dealing with a parent? And have those tools in your toolbox. So at our school, we have those tools available, and it doesn't have to be a script. I know a lot of people get weird about scripts and there's a big controversy about scripts. I'm a big proponent for tools that will help you be successful and proven tools that work. And I think guides are great because it helps you stay on track. It gives you questions. If you get nervous, maybe you're new to admissions, maybe you're not sure what to ask. There's sample questions on there. You can even put it in your own words if you want, but really just talking to parents is really about explaining the process, getting to know them, building the rapport, but then explaining the process and the expectations. And here's
And
one of the
scripts are guides,
expectations.
like you just said. I do want to sit on that for a minute because I'm
Yeah,
not personally like I will die on a hill that yeah, I don't love a script, but I do love a guide because it does keep everything consistent for the
hmm,
school.
yep,
And it actually helps when you're like, gosh, I don't know what to text this person. I give out texting scripts. I have a 10-day strategy for reaching out to new leads, and it includes calls, messages that you leave, and text messages. I mean, it's actual scripts, which I always say this is not Bible. Like, don't copy this, make it your own and change it up. But scripts, you shouldn't be afraid of that. So I love the idea of almost like you need to create somewhat of a guide for your reps on how
yeah,
to deal with parents. Now, the goal, Becky, the goal of any conversation with a lead is always a tour,
Set an
right?
appointment.
That is,
Yes.
yeah, that is the
Yes.
goal. Now, the
Yep.
goal with a parent, it's the same, correct?
The same. The same. And I will tell you, your show rates with you set an appointment with the parent is way higher than if you had to set with the student, then check with the parent, and then kind of coordinate. So really what you want to do is you want to explain the process. Don't, you don't need to spend, 15 minutes, the way you would with a prospective student, really digging in deep and really like having those really in-depth conversations. You're going to find out really kind of like how the student become interested, right? What are they excited about? Tell them what they can expect, like during that appointment, give them kind of a rundown of the expectations, what you're going to cover, and then let them know, hey, this cannot happen without your student there, right? Because we don't want to have that situation where it is a true helicopter parent and they're just swooping in, getting the information, coming to the tour. Like, the student must be present, right? We have to meet with the student. We have to make sure they're a good fit, that they like the school, that they're a good, because they're the one that's going to be actually attending.
Also,
So
sidebar then to go with Madison's question,
yeah,
um, in the chat, if your conversation is actually with the student, not the
sure.
parent, and
Yep.
like you said, you would actually prefer a parent come there, how can you give your best tip on how to have that conversation with the lead and to get their parent there?
So I think a lot of it comes down to what's the age of the student, right? If you know that the student is going to be dependent on using financial aid and going to need their help filling out the FAFSA, and they're going to be meeting with financial aid during that first appointment, you want to do everything you can to get that parent there. Now, if that student is over the age of 24, married, has kids, doesn't need doesn't need their parent to go through the process, it's different. But if you know that this person is 18 years old, just graduating from high school, and is really going to need that support system, then the method that I train is take the tentative appointment approach. So you figure out when works best with the student. So Jen, if you're my student, I say, okay, Jen, this sounds great. So I have 2 appointments available, right? I can meet with you tomorrow at 3 o'clock, or we can meet Friday at 5. What works better for you?
Mhm.
And then you're going to let me know like what works better for you. And then I'm going to say, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this down as a tentative appointment. I'm going to reach out to your mom. Okay. I'm already going to know your mom's name. I'm going to already had that conversation with you. I'm going to reach out to whoever it is that person identifies as their support system. Maybe it's their aunt, their uncle, their guardian, their grandparent. I don't care who it is. You're going to identify that earlier in the conversation. You're going to say, I'm going to reach out to X person, let's say mom in this example, and I'm going to just double check that this date and time works for her. Once it's confirmed, I will send everything out. And, and that's when you have a confirmed appointment, is when you confirm with the parent. But what we train at SPEC is that every single person that you have a conversation with, you should have a follow-up conversation with the parent every
Mm.
single time.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Which I mean, obviously isn't going to work for what I hear also from a lot of people is that the parent and the child don't have the greatest relationship. I mean, I will tell you, Becky, I moved from Canada to America all by myself at the age of 18. To this day, I'm not super close with my family, but I had to do it all on my own. And had someone said something like that to me, I would have
Mm-hmm.
been offended. I would have been like, oh, I'm just a little kid to you. You think I need my mom with me? And so I think making sure that you better understand that lead and the relationship with the parent is going to be vital before you even assume that they have a good relationship with them, that they would even want their parent there. I don't want to turn off anyone. So I probably I love webinars where there's disagreements. They're my favorite. So let's have you on more often.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that approach. I like it for the right lead. I like it for the right lead, but I think it could turn some people off.
It absolutely can, but I'm saying what is best if you're looking at the data, right? What is
Yeah.
best for the overall quality of the lead and the conversion of the lead? Because at the end of the day, we don't just want to have an interview that comes in. We want the person to come in. We want them to enroll. We want them to start school. So we
Yeah.
have to look at the bigger picture. And the data shows that people who come in without parents ghost us later in the process. And that's frustrating for our financial
So
aid
are you
friends.
reaching out to the parent or are you allowing that student to reach out to the parent? Because I like the idea of that as well.
Yeah,
Um,
either way,
Either
but
one.
I think the parent needs to be brought in. And again,
Okay.
it's all about if you're doing your due diligence ahead of time to have these really good conversations with students or with parents at this point, to make sure that, like you said, you understand the dynamic, you understand the student. And that's
Yeah.
where I think a lot of admissions reps are failing. They are not spending the time that they need and asking the tough questions to really understand and build the relationships. The people
Mhm.
that I see in my system that have 90% show rates, 95% show rates for their appointment, they spend a good 15, 20 minutes before a student even comes in talking to the student and understanding them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
They do.
get that. And let's talk, I mean, you want to jump over to the chat? There's a lot of really great questions coming
Oh
in.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. You're our chat monitor. So you tell me what's going on.
Okay, perfect. How do you handle when a parent does come, but they end up not speaking much despite trying to include them in the conversation? You know what? Let's pause these questions for a second and let's take it to the tour because I feel like we need to do a better. Let's chat about what that tour looks like,
Okay.
and then we're going to get to
Yeah.
these.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So kind of first part, we're just going to recap where if we get a parent on the phone, we're going to praise the Lord, jump up and down, say hallelujah. We're going to set the appointment.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we get the student on the phone, we're going to do our best if we know they're dependent to reach out to the parent, have the student reach out, make sure that the parent can come whenever possible. That's going to give us the best end result. And I say whenever possible because there are always going to be situations where that doesn't happen. But what's a best practice? Best practice is try to have the parent there. All right.
Cool.
Now, when it comes to the tour, I think that really what sets successful schools apart when it comes to meeting with multiple generations and multiple ages is the process that you have during your first admissions appointment. I'm a big proponent of having an actual presentation that your admissions follow. And what that does is it really sets the tone for the parents to say, wow, this place has it together. This place is professional. I am going to get the data. Gen X, their motto is in God we trust, all other bring data. Like, I'm not even kidding you. Like, they want to see like data, they want to see a spelling out of all the rules, like they want to see all this stuff. So if they're going to be involved, they want to come to a place that's organized, that has a process, that has a procedure. And right from there, you're going to gain their trust, and they're going to then maybe shop a couple different schools, and they're going to say, wow, I really like that school. They had their stuff together. They
They
had
got
this.
their life together. And Becky, I know that you
Yeah.
and I are aligned on this. We believe that the best tour is someone comes in to an office first for you guys
Yeah.
to have your interview, your chat, and then you go on a tour and then you
Yep.
close it back in the office to either ask for the
Yep.
enrollment or build that next step. So we're sandwiching it with the office. So this doesn't mean when they walk in the door, we're just walking them around the campus. I think that's a bad best practice. I think the better idea that we both agree on is to bring them straight back. And so what you're saying, which I love that you said this because I completely agree. Yes, the first 5 minutes, get to know them, build rapport. I think that's vital. It's actually extremely vital for dealing with objections. You got to
Yes.
know why, right? You got to know what they're doing with their life. Or you can't deal with their objections later. But to have, what would you say, like a slide deck or a
Yeah.
lookbook or
Yes.
something that you are physically walking them through a presentation?
Exactly. Exactly. So at our school, we use a PowerPoint or, a Google Slides presentation.
Love it.
Everybody does it differently, but I would highly recommend doing something like that. That's a best practice because let me tell you, helicopter parents, they're going to sit in your chair and they're going to have a list of questions that they want to go through and they're going to want to talk about it and they're not going to follow your order. Again, you need to remain in control, especially when you have a parent there and maybe you're younger. Maybe you're an admissions rep who is just, in their 20s and it's intimidating to you. Well, let me tell you, if you have a process and you have a procedure and you can tell them like, oh yeah, let me explain, if you can explain to them almost like an agenda, like here's what we're going to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth, that's going to they're going to let down their guard. They're going to be like, okay, she's going to cover my questions. She's going to talk about the curriculum. She's going to talk about the price. We're going to go on a tour. But if you don't tell them all that up front, they're going to be like, okay, I have a list of questions that I brought with me. And they're just going to start firing off questions before you even get a chance to go through the information.
Great point. So you need to be in control of that in control of that conversation. Let's talk about then how to include both parties. Because I personally am a huge proponent of every presentation you give, you ask questions throughout. This is sales 101, guys. This is like when you go to the car lot, they're not just giving you the keys to sit in a car and calling it a day. They're like, how does that feel?
Yeah.
What do you think of that steering wheel? Ooh, turn this button on. They're asking questions to get your buy-in. And so you do that through the admissions process. I liken it to, like, let's say you're going through the Cosmo program and you don't want to go, oh my God, let's not talk about the 12 modules. Like, let's not go too in depth and blow their mind.
No,
But let's
no.
say, we're very focused on 80% of the curriculum is hair. And we talk about cutting and coloring. Becky, which part excites you? What are you most looking forward to? Like, you're
Right.
asking the questions
Yes.
to involve them. Becky, how are you asking questions to involve the parents?
So I have for my schools actually throughout the presentation, again, a guide, kind of like a scripted guide that they can use my words, they can use their own, however they want to do it. And I have specific questions that if a support system is present, ask these questions at different times.
Good.
So I think a really key important thing, and I don't want to give away all the secrets in the
Don't give
secret
away all
sauce.
the
So
secrets. Give us one,
yeah,
okay?
no, but the importance is having set questions already, like for, look at your own process and say, where can I put these questions in? But I think the easiest place to start is, in the getting to know you section in the very beginning, when you're talking about their goals, when you're talking about their interests, how did they become interested in beauty school? Like, what are they passionate about? What are they excited about? Straight up ask the parent, like, hey, so Jen, you're here with your daughter. How do you feel about her going to beauty school? What is your thought about it? Like,
Yeah.
find out, read the room.
What
Are the
is it
parents
about her that
supportive?
you think why you think she's going to make a great cosmetologist? Like, and I would
Exactly.
keep it positive. I would not go down a negative aspect.
No.
I wouldn't even be asking them specifics on, like, what did she want to do when she was younger? Like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't want them talking about something that has nothing to do with my school. And I
Right.
wouldn't talk about them. I would talk about the student.
No. Right. We're bringing them in. And let me tell you, I'm a mom of three. I love to talk about my kids. Ask me about my kids any day, and I will give you the rundown. I will pull out my phone. I will show you photos. And I know that's how parents are. And that's they want to be involved in the process, but they're just so proud of their kids and they're so
Yeah.
excited for them and they're so happy for them. So we want to bring them in. We want to ask them like questions throughout the process. And we want to focus on the student, but we got to remember when we have support system there, we actually have two separate customers and we can't just ignore one,
Mhm.
right? And pay all our
Yeah.
attention to the other. But same thing goes. If you have a parent who's really pushy, who's answering all the questions, who's taking over and is a true helicopter parent, you have to step in and say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Love hearing your perspective. This is so great. I would love to hear what Jen has to say about that. Right. And you have to go out of your way to really include the student and let's hear their voice. Let's hear their opinion. And it needs to be coming from both parties. It cannot be one sided.
I agree. And someone had asked the question about how do we get a parent to speak? And I really think it is just asking them those direct questions. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. Becky, the number one thing that anyone's going to want to talk about on a tour, including parents, is paying for school.
Yeah.
They just are.
Sure.
That is
Yeah.
the number one thing. And so to me, that is the best conversation to have to get parent input. Are you
Yep.
familiar with the FAFSA process? Do you have any
Right.
older children where you had to do that? Like, just asking them questions like that, I think is a great way to start to get their input.
Mhm.
Are you familiar? Have you ever heard of a Parent Plus loan? How do you plan on paying for school? These are
Yes.
conversations that you can have in the admissions office and include the parent, right?
Right. I 100%. You should be asking them those questions even before they go meet with financial aid. I think that we want to set our financial aid partners up for success. So, my best recommendation is like we said, you meet with the student, you build the rapport, you do the tour, you come back, I think admissions should be covering the cost of the program because you built the rapport, or the investment, you should say, not the cost, but the admissions rep should be covering that piece. And
Mhm.
then we hand it over to financial aid to help figure out how they're going to, make this affordable. But that way, when we go in and we introduce them to financial aid, it's a whole different ballpark. When we say, hey, hey, Sue, that's my financial aid rep. I'd say, hi, hey, Sue, this is Jen and, her mom, Becky. And I just had a great conversation with them. They're looking at the cause program. We talked a little, we went over the investment. They're really, planning on utilizing, FAFSA. They've never done it before, giving that person an overview of the conversation for financial aid, because we know our friends in financial aid aren't always the best at that one piece of building rapport and finding out the questions, right? So if we can help them in that way of giving that soft handoff that actually gives them all the details they need, financial aid can just go start doing their job right away and helping that student through the FAFSA, helping them get a PIN set up, helping them, putting in the school code, whatever it is that they need to do at that time. Financial aid can start doing that, and we've already set the scene and the stage for them.
Yeah, and I really think that the financial type of conversation, that is where you're going to see the most involvement from parents. And you really have to prep your admissions reps to be ready to have those conversations, because it can be intimidating. When you have
Mhm.
a 55-year-old man sitting across from a 24-year-old admissions rep,
Yeah,
that's intimidating, Becky. It is.
I know. I know it is.
And so this is, well, first of all, this is one of the benefits to working with a school like a spec franchise, where they actually walk you through the trainings of that. If you're not investing in training, you should be investing in training for your reps, because these are hard conversations to have and they need to be seasoned. They need to know how to handle them. I want to talk about collateral, because as
Mhm.
a marketing girl, I'm a huge fan of I mean, I was a marketing director of a beauty school. Marketing collateral to me has so many benefits. I always called it your best admissions assistant, because for
Mhm.
one, if you're asking someone to pay, let's say $18,000,
Yeah.
$20,000 for your school, and you're giving them like a piece of paper that like you photocopied that morning, that's so
Horrible.
embarrassing. Isn't that horrible? It's
Horrible.
it's it's literally, you are setting them up for failure. The best admissions assistant is stellar collateral. And you know what I love? Collateral for parents. If
Absolutely.
you have a mom and dad sitting across from you and you have something specifically for them, that to me is going to wow me as a parent. So,
Mhm.
Becky, what do you recommend when it comes to collateral for that tour?
Yeah. So I think you don't want to have too much because you don't want to overwhelm people, but you definitely need to have high quality, good collateral of whatever those pieces are. I think it's great to do like collateral per program. So you know what program that student's coming in for, and you have kind of like, okay, these are my folders for cause, these are my folders for SD, these are my folders for massage. And maybe the collateral in each one is going to vary based on the program, right? So let's start there. And then the other thing I want to recommend is just, having program details, and also like the cost breakdown, like that we talked about that we're going to go
Yeah.
over. Making sure they have that, in front of them, I think is really important. And then also, I think what parents, these Gen X parents really care about is they really care about outcomes. So, they really want to know, like, they want to know like the measurable standards for schools, right? They want to know, like, how do these standards link to my student and their career and their overall life success? Like, these are the things that are important to Gen X.
So
So
licensure rates and placement rates, who
yes,
gives a crap when you're 20, but when you're a 55-year-old parent paying for their kid to go to school, you
they want to
you
know.
actually do care. Yeah.
Yes, they want to know. So this is important to talk about and cover, whether it's collateral that's in your take home, you know, kind of folder, or if it's a part of your presentation. What are those outcomes, right? And we just went to NACIS, so we know we have to be reporting those. We know we need to know those on an annual basis, and we need to know those per program. So those are things that we want to share, and those are things that are important to share. And I think that's what's really going to move the needle for parents. And then also just, kind of talking about what are the career pathways, because I think a lot of parents, maybe the baby boomer parents, were more concerned about how much money is my student going to make, right? That's why they weren't big fan of trade schools, because they were, convinced that the only way to get a good job was to go to a 4-year college and get a degree.
Right.
Now the shift has come where they want them to get higher learning, higher education. They want, whether it's a 4-year school, community college, a trade school, they just want them to continue on, and they want to know that they are going to be successful, right? They just want to know that there's a path to success. So if you're able to show parents the different pathways, then that's perfect. Because, like, okay, what can you be as a cosmetologist? Let's look at all the options. You can be behind the chair. You can be a stylist, right? I mean, you can work, editorial with magazines and with photo shoots. You
And
can
work for a
own a
salon, or you
own a
could,
school, own a
sure,
salon,
yeah.
uh, work with a beauty school. A lot of admissions people were students first. I mean, it's just important to show them that it's just a starting point, and then the career pathways are imminent from there. And I think if you can paint that picture for a parent, they don't necessarily care, like, is my student gonna, be a millionaire? They just want to know, like, hey, are they gonna be happy? Are they gonna be successful? Are they gonna be able to take care of themselves? Are
Becky
they gonna have
just
a
gave
job?
you guys some gold right there, because this is the difference between touring a student, a lead, than a parent. Because
Yeah.
Becky, 99% of the leads we meet with say they want to own their own salon. We already know that.
Yep.
And so you actually don't need to go down the path of all the different career options, because in their head, they're going to be a salon owner and they don't care. Which, by the way, leave it up to your education team to start teaching them that there's other opportunities out there. You're going to have career fairs. You're going to have people, guest speakers that are going to come in. That's going to open up their mind. We're not dream crushers on the first hour they're with us. We're not like, well, actually, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
you
right. No.
you should go work for, a salon. Like that's not our time to be a dream crusher. That said, what you said is so valuable, because even though the lead, in their head, they're just going to be a salon owner, the parent is
Hmm.
smarter. They have wisdom. They
Yep.
know that's not going
Yep.
to happen right out of school, likely not to happen. And so they actually do want to hear that stuff. So that's where the
Mhm.
collateral, I think, is important. Having it part of your presentation, that is so gold. And I think, that's something I'm guilty of. Even when I teach reps, I'm very much like, only talk about the stuff they want to talk about. Like this is their tour. Like they don't want to talk about all this other stuff. But that's where you have to train for parents, because parents do want to talk about all that other stuff. So I love that you brought that up. I think that's great. Um, I'm going to ask you, maybe it's a hard question, but what happens when a child and parent, when it gets a little tense in the room, when there's some heat, when there's some, you are definitely
Oh,
not
gosh.
doing this, it is how much money, how are you playing
Uh-huh.
peacemaker, and what are you doing in those awkward situations, because they're going to happen.
So sometimes, a lot of times, I think we're called admissions counselors for a reason. Yeah. And I think that we just have to, I think sometimes admissions reps are too passive. And
Mm.
I think the best admissions rep asks the tough questions, and they get in there and they are a part of the process. So I wouldn't be opposed to just saying, like, okay, like, there's some tension here. Why don't we talk this out? Why don't we talk this out? Because, you know, let what I'm hearing you say, and here's what I hear the mom saying, and here's what I hear you say, here's what I'm hearing the daughter say. And just opening the line of communication, I think, is really key in those moments, and just helping them see each other's side. And then we're always listening between the lines, right? The best listener is listening between the lines. And then we're going to help the parent see things from the student's perspective, and we're also going to help the student see it from the parent's perspective, so they can come kind of to the middle. And it's not always an easy thing to do, and a lot of people would just much rather just stay out of it. But I'm telling you, if you're going to be, have the guts to go in there and ask the hard questions, and really be a part of the process, you're going to have a more committed student. You're going to have a lot less LOAs, a lot less drops. And it all comes down to being willing to have this tough conversations.
So I'd rather have the fight in front of my face than behind my back, because that student has no ammo and no one to help them when they go home. They just
Mm-hmm.
have a parent laying into them saying this isn't going to happen. So I
Right.
like that you said that, because yeah, I mean, you can be a backup for the student first of all. Um,
Mm,
because you know more than that parent, especially about going to beauty school. You know way more about it. So um I like that. I like how you want to jump in there and you do want to counsel them from both sides. I think that's important too, not just taking one side, but saying,
yeah.
they bring up a really good point, and we hear this all the
Don't,
time.
yeah. Don't make the parent upset though. Don't just jump
Sure.
in and defend the student. Because
Yeah.
again, if the parent's paying for school, like we've got to make them feel included in the process. But it's, it's just, you've got to be able to say, like, let's look at it, what I hear you saying. And then also, like, kind of taking each side and saying, like, your parent is, look, your parent is, trying to support you. They have some concerns. Parent,
Mhm.
share those concerns, right? Okay, now parent, it's really just a matter of helping them kind of get on the same page and talk through things. Now, is there going to be every single time where you can work it out right there in the office? No, maybe not.
No.
But
Yeah.
more than likely, if you sit down and try,
Yeah.
open the
I
lines of
agree.
communication, right?
I think that's great. Sierra has a question, and guys, we are wrapping up here. We're on the final 9 minutes. I don't know how this goes.
Ah,
Like, I was hoping to leave some time to talk about the Golden Bachelorette, but that's fine if you just want to add your comments about who your favorite is in the chat. But Sierra writes, how to handle parents who won't give over the reins to the student. Asked a dad for his daughter's phone number to call
mhm,
her for an admissions interview, and he said, call my number. I'll hand her the phone. And he put his phone number
mhm.
and email on her application. I mean, first of all, legally for the application, I think that's just where you have to say, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry. We have to
yeah.
have, you're not
So I
applying.
think, yeah, I think it's important to, again, we're setting the expectations and we're letting people know. I think it's a little tricky in the beginning, right? Because we want that student, that parent to come in and be a part of that process. But once they move forward and decide, yes, this is the right fit for me, this is the right school, I want to move forward, I want to become a student, it's really important for us to tell the parents moving forward, due to the FERPA laws, like we are going to have contact with your students. And I'm telling you guys, it's an adjustment for them because they are used to the world of technology of like, I can just open up an app, I can see my students' grades, I can see their attendance, I can see how they're doing. That's what they're used to, especially as we deal with more millennial parents that'll be coming in shortly. They are really used to like tracking their kids, knowing where they are all the time, having these
Sure.
apps that give them the luxury to look in. But again, this is a transition in their life where this student is going into adulthood. They're now 18. And we need to just let them know, like, again, we're not being the bad guy. This is a FERPA law and this is what it states, right?
Yeah,
So we just need to set that expectation. Same thing with if the parent needs to be involved with the FAFSA. We're not the bad guy saying your parent has to be here. This is what our government requires, right? It's
sure.
just understanding the process. If you don't explain the why, people will have pushback. But if you always start with why, then people don't fight you as much. They understand why and they just go with the flow. But if
So
you don't
really, we are
explain it
saying
to
this from the
them,
very beginning, to your point. We are not
yeah,
waiting till like
no,
we're down the line and, oh, by the way, moving forward, I'm gonna need your child's name. It's even on that very first phone call. I love that you called. I love that you're proactive, just so you know, moving forward with paperwork and even with the tour, we are going to need your daughter involved in this process. I'm actually going to need her name and phone number.
yes.
On the application. It's not going to be yours, like telling them that from the very beginning so that it isn't a problem. Kayla has a question. What do you do when a parent is involved even after the student is admitted? Like if they are contacting the admission side of things since we are their first contact.
We can't. It's again, it's the FERPA law. We cannot give any information about the student, right? We can't. And it's important to tell them that at the first admissions appointment. So I think a lot of it goes back to admissions has to set the expectations and the standards for all the things later down the line, whether that's like what is the attendance requirements, what is your academic, for SAP to meet SAP, all the things that we were talking about in NACIS. If admissions isn't going through that and making it clear, then admissions is failing the students, because admissions needs to be the one to set the expectations from the very first day, the very first appointment. And so and I'll say this with Gen X parents, it is so much better, right, to work with them from the beginning, talk to them from the beginning, than have to like jump in when there's a problem, right? If we're setting the expectations, we've set the rapport, they know who we are, they've worked with us, it's going to be much easier for us along the way if we're doing that from the very beginning.
You are doing a disservice to the student, I will say. I know that, Anthony wrote in here that if they have a signed release, I will just say, I actually think you're hurting the student if you're allowing their parent to continue taking over. Their parent, the parent isn't going to school with them, you guys. They're not the ones attending class, and they're not the ones graduating and getting their license and going out and getting a career. It's the student. So one of the best things you can do is be an advocate for the student by getting the parent out of the way after they're enrolled. I mean, they're adults.
100%.
They're adults. These are not
100%.
elementary school kids where you need the parents to show up to the PTA. Even if you have the parents' permission to like be shared everything, I think it's in the best interest of that student to learn how to be independent when they're at college or at your
I
beauty school.
agree. I agree. And it's okay. Like you can let them know, especially if it's a deal breaker for enrollment. Like, yes, this is the law, this is FERPA, but it is up to the student who they want to share their records with. So if the
Yeah.
student makes that choice, again, it's the student's choice. If the student makes that choice to release that information to you, we can absolutely have that conversation. But again, that's something you and your student need to decide, because we are teaching them independence. We are teaching them, how to move forward with their life as an adult. This is the first stepping stone of that. So yes, we can release it to you if you sign the release, if your student signs the release form. But if they don't, unfortunately, this is a part of their learning process and their growing process. And we want to help them. We want to help them grow and mature into a successful beauty professional. Because let's be honest, you're not going to be there to help them, if they have a conflict with their supervisor at work or with one of their clients. But what we want to do is we want to empower them, and we want to teach them how to do all of these things moving forward. You've set a great example for them. Again, always building up the parents, always being on their side, but understanding like it's time to let them go now and kind of spread their wings, right? So
I
it's
agree.
a fine line. It's a fine balance.
Yeah, and Kayla asks in the chat right now, what about working with kids who are under 18 who haven't yet started the program, but they start that, which a lot of kids do, right? Like I will
Yeah.
tell you at BSD, 22% of our leads right now are graduating in 25 or 26.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge number. And so I think it's great to have parents involved, especially for younger kids throughout the process. But maybe to your point, Becky, and like we were just saying, to start setting them up for, hey, once your child is enrolled, they're the student, they're the adult, and this is
Yeah.
what's going to happen. But keeping them in the loop, you want that because you want the kid to start. And honestly, they're going to start if they have a mom who's very, mom or dad pushing them. So
Yeah, they are.
I honestly think, Becky, after all this, you have definitely shifted my mind to look at parents being involved as a more positive thing. I hope you all learned that same thing today. I hope you all see this as not a negative, but as something that will actually help shows and help enrollment. Such great information. We would love to have Becky's playbook on this, but you're just going to have to become a spec member if you want that.
Absolutely. Join the franchise. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely. Reach out to Becky for more info on that, and she will get you in touch with the people at Spec if you're thinking about becoming a Spec partner school. Regardless, guys, we made it through our September webinar. Next month's webinar, it's already scheduled in October, and we are going to be chatting about organic social, which as something I'm super passionate about. We are going to be live together watching TikToks and Instagrams, and I'm going to be telling you what's great and what's not about them. We're also going to be looking at landing pages. I have a guest, Brian from MDT, who's going to come on, and we are going to live audit pages. So URLs, home pages, all that stuff. We're going to be telling you what's wrong with it, what's great about it, so we can get you more leads, because that's really what we care about. Thank you all so much for joining us. Merry Christmas. And Becky, thank you so much for coming onto our webinar today. As always, you're a fantastic guest.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye.